So the Queen Mary brought you to New York. And what happened after that?
Well, when I don't know what you call it when you get off the ship, when you're getting off the ship. When you get on the ship, it's boarding, but when you exiting, maybe exiting.
Yeah.
When we were exiting the ship, there was a whole group of people. This was in New York, and they were all standing around with signs. And this one little woman with gray hair and glasses, I always remember her face, had this big sign, "The Lightholder Family." And we walked out. I said, "Mom, look, that's a relative." And we all walked over to her. And I know we got in a cab, and we went to these apartments. If you ever watch Sex and the City, those apartments that those girls lived in with the steps up and then the door, that's where the relatives lived. And they took us in that beautiful apartment, empty for us. They gave it for us for 2 or 3 nights for us to stay in.
And these were Grandpa's aunts and uncles?
Yeah, and cousins and
immigrated.
uncles. And so that night, I can't remember, we were so tired. But the next morning, we had like all these relatives that met up with us. And they're so happy. They were giving all of us kids money. And I had so much money, it all changed, you know. And I didn't know what to do with it. And then this one, he says, "I'm your uncle. I know what you need. You need a purse. Girls, get her a purse." So they got me this big purse, and they filled it with money. And I think they did the same to the other kids. I was just so busy looking at all that money. And then they took us to Statue of Liberty. They took us...
Didn't you see the Statue of Liberty when you were on board the Queen Mary? I remember you telling me that.
Yes, yes. Do you want to hear about that?
Yeah, I'd love to hear.
Well, we were all on deck, most of the passengers, because we knew we were coming in to New York. And so everybody's screaming and pointing and yelling. And all of a sudden, these hands came down and picked me up. And this man said, "Little girl, you can't see the Statue of Liberty down there." And he held me up on his shoulders. He says, "There she is. See the green lady standing in the water? She's welcoming us." And I thought that was real sweet. Otherwise, I wouldn't have seen it.
Yeah, that's a memory.
Yeah. And so then when we got off the ship, there was all the relatives with the signs, and they took us to that apartment where we stayed 2 or 3 days. And then we went every day. Those cousins had something for us to see in New York. And I don't remember everything, but I remember the Statue of Liberty because I had viewed it from the Queen Mary.
Yeah.
And then we went inside her, and we walked up these little stairs to the light.
Wow.
And me and Richard were saying, "We're in the light. We're up here in the light." And that's all I remember about that part of New York. So like, we were going to take the trains all the way across. Dad planned every second of our trip, which was great, because Mom tended to get lost. I inherited that. I'm the same way. But she always found where we were going.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Because she was so social. She talked to everybody or anybody, and she was so sweet. Everybody wanted to help her. So we had a good mom for that trip, because the rest of us, I don't know about Richard, he seemed to find his way, but the rest of us all got lost. But you couldn't get lost on the Queen Mary because they took such good care of you. Where are we now? We're getting off
the
Queen
train.
Mary.
You were going to take the train.
Yes, the trains. We had to take trains from New York to Texas, to Lubbock, Texas. And it was in March when we came over, and it was quite cold in New York. But all the way across the United States till we got to Texas, it was hot, and it got hot, 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 and hotter till we reached Texas. The trains aren't too memorable because they were all crowded, and all of us kids were taught, if you're sitting in a seat anywhere on a bus or a train and some adult comes on, you get up immediately and you give them your seat, because that's called good manners. So that's what we did all the way across the United States. We jumped up and we gave our seats, and then we sat down on the floor again. So I don't have much memory except that it was really hot. Oh, I have a great memory. I forgot. It was hot and miserable, and people weren't chatty like Irish people. They were just real quiet because they knew where they were going. But for us, we didn't really know what it was like, and we'd never been on a train like this before. We'd been on trains in Ireland, but not like this, because we had to travel from New York to Texas, and we had to catch like 2 or 3 or maybe 4 trains to get to Lubbock. Anyway, everybody was kind of miserable. We were all excited, but the people on the train weren't. They were just all kind of grumpy, wumpy, dumpy. And my mom noticed that. I looked at her. I could tell she was up to something. She tried to talk to people. Everybody would talk to my mom. But these people, you know, they give 1 or 2 answers, and that was it. Well, she grabs her big purse, and out of that purse, she took this Irish whiskey. And out of her purse again, she took this little thing that looked like a real thimble, only it was bigger. It was a shot glass, an Irish shot
Grandma.
glass. Grandma didn't drink a drop.
No.
How did she know to take that?
I don't know.
The only explanation is the woman was a genius when it comes to social interaction
Yeah.
and knowing what other people want. She was like a caretaker, just a born caretaker.
Right.
And so she pulls this Irish brandy out of her purse, and we're all sitting on the floor, and me and Richard wondered, she doesn't drink. She had that on her the whole time. And she said, would anybody like a drop of Irish whiskey? And all those people around us started clapping and yelling, I'll have 1, I'll have 2, I'll have the whole bottle. And they're all happy, and she's pouring it out and handing it to everybody. As I'm talking about this, I am there. I'm actually there. I mean, it brings you back.
Yeah.
And so my mother was so happy to please people. You know, she's pouring and pouring. Everybody was drinking. Nobody got drunk. And the conductor went around and he said, what's going on here? Some kind of party? And my mom said, would you like a drop? And he goes, you bet. So everybody's drinking, and everybody started talking and happy, and they're all passing around the bottle. And I, as an 11-year-old child, I didn't know that liquor changes you and makes you happy or sad or whatever. But Mom gave them just enough to where everybody was talking to each other, and people who weren't became social. And then I realized, maybe drinking a little bit makes people more willing to talk about things to other people. So we did that all the way across America till we hit Texas.
And did you spend the night on the train? Do you remember
That's
that?
a good question. I don't think so.
You don't remember?
I don't remember because there wasn't any sleeping accommodations. Because I'm sure we went the cheapest route,
Yeah.
you know, with 4 kids and a woman. And it's the same. I mean, Irish people are so tough. They don't care about fancy schmancy.
Right.
I mean, they like it, but they don't do anything as long as they're reaching their goals. They're really tough people.
Right.
And so us little kids, we were just delighted to be on the train. I don't think it was overnight. We kept changing trains till we got to Lubbock. And so when we got to Lubbock, it was the end of the day. And my mother got off the train first. We're on the train watching her get off. And there was a group of people, they were all light holders, that were greeting my mom. There was a newspaper with a big camera, you know, smile. And actually we were in the Avalanche Journal, which is, if you look that up today, they're still making papers. The Avalanche Journal.
Didn't they write a story about you, your family on
Yes.
St. Patrick's Day? And your picture
Yes, they did.
was in a paper. I
Yeah,
think
because
we
that
had-
was March. I'm not sure, you know, the date.
It may have been later. Yeah.
Yeah. But the picture did appear the next day. We were in the paper.
Interesting.
But Trudy and Uncle Chris picked us up, and they were delighted to see us. Everybody was crying, laughing. And me as a little kid, I wondered, why are they crying? And so they whisked us off to their ranch, which was a beautiful, small ranch, but it was a ranch. And we stayed with Uncle Chris and Aunt Trudy for a little while till we found a place. And from then on in Texas, that's where we lived, in Lubbock, Texas. And we all went to school, and we were everybody, the whole staff was told that they were going to have an Irish family there. And everybody in the school, I mean everybody, came to shake her hand.
Nice.
I hope I don't cry. But the Texas people were so
Warm.
they were hot. They just loved meeting us. Everybody wanted to shake our hands, told us how nice we were, what a beautiful little family we were, and they loved my mother.
Didn't your
And-
family get phone calls after being in the paper? People wanted to get to know you.
Yes, that's a good question, Michelle. Yes, as a matter of fact, we had a Dr. and Mrs. Snow
That's right.
who saw our picture, and she was born in Ireland, married a doctor in America, and she never went back to Ireland, so she wanted to befriend us, and actually we became part of her family. And her husband and her son, Clyde Snow, were very famous. Not then, not in the 50s, but later on. They were forensic scientists, where they would take the skull of a dead person and they could ID the person by what they did. So they became very famous for doing that. Both of them were practicing physicians.
Right. I think I learned about them in anthropology class randomly.
Yeah.
In college.
They were our
Right.
friends. There was
Yeah.
nothing the Snow family would not do for us. They said, "You are our family."
Now that cedar chest that I have,
Uh-huh.
that came from Texas. Who gave that to you?
I would say it would be Aunt Trudy.
It was from Trudy.
Yeah.
'Cause I still use
Aunt
that.
Trudy was married to Uncle Chris,
Right.
who had sponsored us. Uncle Chris was my dad's dad. So he was our great uncle.
Right. Do you want to take a little break?
Yeah.